Have you ever just stopped and thought that the traditional advice we all get about money, go to school, get a good job, save up, just doesn't seem to work like it used to? Well, today, we're jumping headfirst into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book that pretty much blew the lid off that old formula and challenged millions of people to escape the daily grind. I mean, come on, you've heard this a million times, right? Your parents, your teachers, everyone. For generations, this was it. This was the blueprint for a good, successful life. It was the promise of security, the big reward for all your hard work. But what if that promise is a little broken now? Because in a world that's changing faster than we can keep up, you really have to ask yourself, is following this old worn-out map still the safest way to go? Or is it actually leading us right into a trap? Okay, so let's really get into this. The world has done a complete 180, but a lot of the advice we get about building a career and making a living, it feels like it's still stuck back in the old days. Just think about it for a second. The idea of working for one company your whole life, that's ancient history. Downsizing is just a normal part of business now. The whole idea of a safe and secure job has pretty much become a myth. So following that old script is kind of like trying to use a map from the 1950s to navigate a city today. You're going to get lost. So if the old map is useless, how in the world do we find a new one? Well, the author of the book, Robert Kiyosaki, he found his by listening to two totally different father figures. And their completely opposite ways of looking at the world, well, that's the core of this whole philosophy. See, on one side, you've got his actual father, who he calls his poor dad. This guy was brilliant, a top academic, and the head of education for the entire state of Hawaii. Then, on the other side, you have his best friend's dad, his rich dad. This guy didn't even finish the 8th grade, but he was out there building a business empire. I mean, talk about two different worlds colliding. And this is where you really see the clash. Poor dad would always say that the love of money is the problem. But rich dad, he flipped it completely. He believed the lack of money was the real evil, the thing that causes all the stress, the fear, and makes you miss out on life. Poor dad's go-to line was always, "I can't afford it." It's just a statement. It shuts your brain down, end of story. But rich dad, he would ask a question, "How can I afford it?" See the difference? That simple little switch forces your brain to start looking for answers and solutions. It's the difference between a mental roadblock and a mental workout. And this thinking carried over to how they saw risk. Poor dad's entire philosophy was based on fear. Just avoid risk, period. Rich dad's approach was all about education. Risk is everywhere, so you might as well learn how to manage it. One is about constantly playing defense, and the other is about playing offense. And here it is, maybe the biggest difference of all. Poor dad's main goal was to climb the corporate ladder. Rich dad's goal was to own the ladder. One mindset is about finding your place inside the system. The other is about building the system yourself. Now, these weren't just theories he was hearing. Oh no. Kiyosaki learned all of this through some pretty direct and, honestly, pretty painful experiences. Let's look at the very first lesson Rich Dad ever taught him, and it all started with his very first job. So picture this. A 9-year-old Kiyosaki is desperate to learn about money, so Rich Dad offers him a job. And his pay? A whopping 10 cents an hour. Seriously, even way back in 1956, this was basically nothing. And he was working for hours, dusting old cans in a stuffy store. So, of course, after a few weeks of this, he's angry, he's had enough, and he wants to quit. And it turns out that was the whole point. Rich Dad was waiting for that. He explained that life doesn't give you nice little lectures, it just pushes you around. And when it pushes you, you can either let it knock you over, or you can wake up and realize that every single push is actually a lesson. And this was the lesson. Rich Dad told him that the anger he was feeling about the low pay, well, that's how most people feel their entire lives. He was teaching him the most important rule of all. You have to stop working for money and start learning how to make money work for you. But the lesson wasn't over, not by a long shot. To see if the kid really got it, Rich Dad put him to the test. He started offering him raises. First, 25 cents an hour, then a whole dollar an hour, then $2. For a 9-year-old, this was mind-blowing. And then came the knockout punch, a ridiculous offer of $5 an hour, which was more than most adults were making back then. And once the offer got that crazy, the temptation finally broke, and the real point became clear. Rich Dad explained that he was just showing him the two emotions that run most people's lives, fear and greed. First, the fear of not having money makes you desperate to take a job. But then, once you get that paycheck, greed or, desire kicks in and you start dreaming about all the cool stuff you can buy. And right there, that's the trap. So this trap, this cycle that's driven by fear and desire, it has a name that perfectly captures that feeling of running as fast as you can, but never actually getting anywhere. It's called the rat race. And this is the fundamental problem that Rich Dad wanted Kiyosaki to understand. It's that cycle. Get up, go to work, pay the bills. Then you get a raise, so you spend a little more, and suddenly you're right back where you started, just with bigger bills to pay. And here's what that looks like in real life. It's the path that's been basically programmed into us. You study hard, you get a safe job, maybe you get married. Hey, 2 incomes are great. So you buy a bigger house, a nicer car, but with all that comes higher taxes and way more debt. So what do? You work harder, you chase promotions, and you get stuck. And then the craziest part is you turn to your own kids and say, study hard and get a good job. This cycle just starts all over again. So here's the absolute key. A bigger paycheck is not the answer. In fact, a lot of the time, more money just makes the trap even deeper. The only real way out is to completely change your way of thinking through a different kind of education, the kind they definitely don't teach you in school. And that brings us to the solution. And here's the good news. It's not about being born rich or getting straight A's. It's about waking up the financial intelligence that's already inside pretty much everyone. It's just dormant. And that's really what it all boils down to. Financial education isn't about memorizing complicated formulas or picking the right stocks. It's just a fundamental shift in how you see the world. It's about learning the rules of the game that wealthy people play by so you can stop being a piece on the board and start being the one who designs the whole game. Okay, so let's wrap this up. What are the big things to take away from all this? First, you've got to question the conventional advice everyone gives you. Second, learn to recognize when fear and desire are the ones making your money decisions. Third, always remember the goal. Make money work for you, not the other way around. And finally, the most powerful tool you have for building wealth isn't your job, it's your own mind. So I'll just leave you with this one last thought. In a world that is constantly changing, trying to play it safe by following old, outdated advice might just be the absolute riskiest thing you can do. So the real question you have to ask yourself is, are you playing it safe or are you playing it smart?